Good morning. This is weird. I'm used to having things in front of me to put my book down, but we'll get through this together. Um, Today is the second service that we're holding inside Densho, and I wanted to point out one of the features of this room, which is the artwork that's above us. This is called the Memory Net Remembrance Project, and the artist's name was Laura Niida. Densho was started in 1996, and the history of Densho is connected with the history of Seattle Betsuin. In fact, in this book, Mukashi Mukashi, I'm actually going to hand this around. One of the photos, this photo 96 on this page, you can actually see on these 3 pages. I'll start with you. You can pass that back. It actually shows the procession of moving the Gohonzon from the old temple 4 blocks away into here. And so it was carried on a palanquin, like a sedan chair, by the temple members down the street and installed into the temple. And it seems really appropriate or interconnected that we're meeting here, because here Densho is sharing its history with us, and helping us to recall how this temple came into being. And Densho is also a tenant of Seattle Betsuin, and here we are just under this image of the remembrance of things. And I think memories is something that we are having to think about a lot as a sangha. The fire, of course, is changing how we interact, right? We have the children that are in Whiskey Review Manor, also something that is connected with Seattle Betsuin. We have different services being held in different places because we don't have access to the main service, the main hall, the main hondo. Although the temple itself, actually, this area, the gymnasium, was actually open before the rest of the temple. So it was open for a few months beforehand as everything was being constructed. And so there were talks and things given outside of here. We have a long history that predates the temple. And I thought about this as I was reading through the Wheel of the Sangha. There was a quotation from something that was written in 1978 that quoted the Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, who said, "All things are characterized with emptiness." And for those of you who attended the service, as just where we opened the temple just for the time to do a short service, we literally watched the hondo being emptied at the end of that. The Wakabayashi group came and started to remove the items from the hondo. So we see the beginning and the end of this phase of the temple. For almost 83 years, this was the way that things appeared. But it's not the only time that there's been an interruption. It's not even the only time this decade that we've had a change in the way that we've had to do our service. When COVID came, we had sort of an instantaneous stop, or we had to completely change the way that we went about things, and that caused a lot of suffering in the members, in the sangha, because it was something that we had come to rely on. We've come to depend on this space as being ours and being safe. And there is value in that safety, in that we know that we have some sense of permanency. But that's not what Buddhism is about, right? Buddhism teaches us that all things are impermanent. And that one of the things about Jodo Shinshu is that we deal mostly with the impermanence, right? Even in Japan, Jodo Shinshu tend to be the ones that are conducting the memorial services, right? Memorial. We are remembering the people who have passed before us. Our big service of the year is what? Bonodori, right? The big festival that we have, where we're asking our ancestors to come back to us so that we can have a big party together, right? The idea of loss is baked in to the practice of Jodo Shinshu. This is the stuff we're good at. And as much as I love this building that's next to us, I also know, because of what Buddhism has taught me, that this thing will not last forever. And that we have to recognize the difference between the temple as a building and the Sangha as the community, right? The temple is where all of the chicken gets put together for Bonodori, right? It's I read some more in that book about in Mukashi Mukashi about what the requests were for the temple, and they wanted a room for ikebana. They wanted just flowers, just the flower arranging room. That was one of the requests for the original construction of the temple. So the temple has its purpose, but Sangha is a different thing, right? Sangha is the reason I can say chicken room, and you all know what that is, right? Everybody has their own memories of this building, but it is just a place where community happened. You know, the community is the most important part of all of this, and this is why we have to think about what is going on. I think there are going to be a lot of decisions about what happens with the reconstruction of the temple to make it more reflect what our community needs and wants. I hesitate to say it's a blessing in disguise, but everything has its positives and its negatives in our history. And when we experience something like this, first off, we feel sad. And I think a lot of people have felt angry about this, and of course, Buddhism teaches us that that's not a very positive emotion to carry forward, right? We should understand that we have lost, but we should also move forward from it. We have a moment to think that we wouldn't have had otherwise, where we can start new things. And I want to talk a little bit about the role of the Sangha and what we are here for. And this goes back to, well, I'll tell you the one moment that this all became real for me, and it's probably a good time for that to happen. It was about 5 minutes before I was ordained. Right at the very moment before the final service, where they take the razor and put it on your head, and at that point you become an ordained minister. The speech that they give you says, basically, this is your job from now on, forever. As long as you're alive, the thing that you're doing is spreading the teaching of Jodo Shinshu. Which kind of should have been in the pamphlet. It should have been the thing that they told me about first, right? Because now I was kind of pretty deep into it before they told me that this is my one most important task in life. But the teaching itself is what continues the practice of Jodo Shinshu, right? The temple could go away, and as long as we have a strong community, as long as we have the connections, we are able to continue that teaching. When we think about the loss of this, Buddhism talks very honestly about what is going to happen when Buddhism ends. It says we're now in a period where Buddhism has degraded because we're not in the room with Shakyamuni Buddha, and he was right there telling us everything that we need to know to become enlightened. We're now in a period where it's very hard for us to achieve enlightenment, and that's why in Jodo Shinshu we depend on Amida Buddha, on the workings of Amida Buddha and the Nembutsu. But there is an end to the practice of Buddhism. After this, there becomes, just like the memory of any individual person, there's a final loss, which is when nobody ever speaks of you again, right? That when you have completely left everyone's consciousness. There can be a time for that for Jodo Shinshu. There can be a time for that for Buddhism as well, when nobody that's alive has heard of this teaching, and that ends the cycle of Buddhism. And in the larger sense, there's another Buddha that comes after that, and that's kind of how the cycle goes on within Buddhism. But what's important to note is that this building is the seed that spreads that teaching. And we all have things that we want out of the building, and now is a time for us to think, what can we do with it? And my job as a minister's assistant, and the job of of Rinban and the BCA and Jodo Shinshu Honganjika are all going to be thinking about what can this building do to help people's spiritual advancement. I think that it's important that we all want our own things. We all want to make flowers and have a tea room and things like in this. There are always going to be things that we want to add and build from this. But this, I think, gives us an opportunity to remember that this is a religious building. that the religious part of this really matters, and gives us an opportunity to more fully practice Jodo Shinshu, knowing what we lost and what we almost lost that we could get back. So that's my message for today. Please have a lovely Sunday. I hope it doesn't continue to do what it's doing outside. But with that, please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda.